Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Kalen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. How are you, Sam?
Kalen, it's great. Thanks.
Feels like I haven't seen you in eons.
It feels like a couple of years. You look different.
Do I?
You sexier by chance?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I've been doing the cold plunging. Cold plunging is actually...
That'll make your skin all taut.
Yeah.
Won't it?
Well, they say the seawater is good for you, I guess. So.
Oh, you're doing it in seawater?
Yeah, in the ocean.
You're
yeah.
polar.
Just
you
walk
don't
right
have
into
one of
the
those
ocean.
tanks full of ice?
No. I mean, I
Thank
may
God.
go to that, but I enjoy the being a part of the nature component of it.
Yeah, don't buy one of those tubs.
No, they're like 6,000 or 7,000. It's
Are they
crazy.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, get you a trough. We'll fill it full of ice.
Just fill it full of ice. Well, we're very fortunate today. We've got an amazing industry leader over the years. Audrey Alsterberg is joining us, and originally from Rebar fame, a bunch of other credits to her resume as well.
Cascadia Bakery.
Cascadia Bakery. Like
Pure vanilla.
This is like for people, and I don't want to embarrass Audrey because she's here, but like it's iconic that that she's agreed to come on our show. She doesn't do a lot of these things and hasn't over the years ever. So I'm tickled, and thanks for Sam for reaching out to invite her on the show, and thank you for coming on the show. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you both for inviting me, and I probably wouldn't have done it for anyone else but Sam. He just didn't have to really twist my arm too hard, but yeah, no, this is not my forte.
Well, when I was reaching out to your son Seamus to try to get your email address, he did wish me luck. I'm like, no problem, Seamus, I got this. Well, no, it is really it's a pleasure.
No,
really
you.
nice to see you again, and I can't wait to hear more about how you started and where the Rebar fame came from. There's so much to talk about.
Well, there's so many firsts
road.
too. I mean, you think of different things that other people have done over the years, and a lot of my memories in the hospitality business is in the Bastion Square area, going by Rebar. You're doing cutting edge things back then with passion, which I think my original business wasn't in the hospitality, but to see that take effect there, and obviously there's a bunch of firsts that you've done. Like, how did you get into the business? Like, what was your origin story for either starting Rebar or even before that?
Well, my first restaurant job, besides the Arctic Circle and the Dairy Queen.
Oh, you worked at a Dairy Queen?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would be
Love
a Dairy
it.
Queen, wouldn't you?
Speaking to my heart.
Yeah. I worked at, I don't know if anybody remembers it. It was a little place on Lord Fort called The Nutshell.
Oh, the
It
Nutshell.
had the squirrel on the door.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that was so cool. That was my real official first restaurant job.
Well, what were they serving in there?
Like go in early in the morning, and it was spotless. It was just this, I think it must have been Swedish. This old gentleman with his whites and his big hat. And I just go in, and my job every morning was to make a rhubarb custard tart from scratch.
Oh,
it smells so good. And then, do fresh orange juice and a few things to prep for lunch, and then do lunch service on the floor. So that was my first real entry.
And that's in Victoria.
Yeah.
So your first food job was in Victoria.
Pretty well. A lot of service before.
Were you Are you from Vancouver Island?
No, I was born in Portland.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
And I grew up in Portland.
Oh, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And what brought you to Vancouver Island?
It's a long story, but my best friend married someone, and they moved to Toronto, and they eventually moved back to the West Coast, and they ended up on the Skeety Island.
Oh, my goodness.
And who knows how that happened, but anyway, who knows. But I went up to visit them, and then that was it. I fell in love with it up here, and that was it.
That's a classic story. People who come to the West Coast, it's hard
never
to
leave.
Never leave.
Yeah.
So how long were you on the Skeety for? Was it
A
years?
total of 9 years.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
right.
goodness.
Yeah.
So you hunkered down.
Hunkered down, did the homesteading, did garden, cleared land,
Wow.
the whole thing.
That's incredible. So then what brought you to Victoria? Then obviously I'm assuming you came from Lesquiti to Victoria.
Yeah. Well, my best friend, who was Bonnie, her husband, Alan DiFiore.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Alan DiFiore.
Yeah.
That's a name.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So he was friends with Howie Siegel.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, there's the whole Lesquiti Howie Siegel story. But anyway. Anyway, I think they were writing for Czech, the two of them. They were doing ads and things and this and that. Anyway, and Howie ended up opening, well, they both ended up opening Pagliacci's together.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had this whole long story of I was doing other things, but I eventually ended up baking with Alan's mother, Mary DiFiore, doing the cheesecakes and chocolate cakes for Pegs.
Oh, okay.
That was sort of my Victoria entry into the.
So were you like, are you a trained pastry chef? Are you like just self-taught?
All self-taught.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you can just make the food that you make just so good. Like the flavor combination we were talking before, there's only 2 people I know who make as good a food. Like stuff that I just want to eat. But it's true, you're both so talented at just coming up with these great flavors and making them so that you want to eat them, but also making them really approachable to be able to make it home too. And I was thinking lots about your influence and the Rebar's influence in Victoria and in general. And the cookbook must have really been just a point of interest for one thing. Probably turned a lot of things on its head in some ways, but it also brought the Rebar and that style of cooking into so many people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
And that must have just, well, I can see it because I see the cookbook in everyone's home, and everyone's copy of it is all torn up and ratted. Like it's such a well-used cookbook in so many people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
So where'd the idea for Rebar come from? Like, how did that opportunity present itself? Where did how did you identify that?
Yeah. I was going to say, back to Lesquiti, I think that's where I learned to cook because you can't go to the store.
You pretty much have to make
do
everything.
and, sub what you can sub and all the fresh food there. So that was a real learning ground for me. Plus just absorbing every cookbook I could get my hands on. But anyway, Rebar. So I'd go down to Seattle every once in a while, and I was planning on opening something sort of similar. I don't know if you know the Silver Palette Cookbook, or there's a deli in Portland called Elephants.
Yep.
I had this idea of doing sort of a deli takeout idea, but went to Seattle one weekend and stumbled across a place called the Gravity Bar.
Oh.
And it was wild. It just felt electric.
Yeah.
And it was, James Brown blasting and serving shots of wheatgrass and crazy people and just everybody just having a blast. And it was just this tiny little hole in the wall, but it just was amazing. And I just said, put on the brakes.
Yeah. Like
this energy, I want that.
Did you leave there going, this is what I want to do. This
Exactly.
is what we need. This is, you just felt it.
Yeah. Didn't even give it a second thought. So that's where that came from.
Wow. And then did you own, because when I started there, it was like almost your first day. We were still painting
really?
walls.
Oh,
I
God.
think. But before that, didn't you have a little, not a kiosk, but a little shop, right, that sold sandwiches?
Yeah. There's painting. I'll never forget this woman. We were painting that lime green.
Yeah.
I'll never forget this woman walked in and she had this awful look on her face and she said, this would nauseate me. I'd never eat here.
And then you're like, yep, let's go.
Yeah, well, we don't want you.
Yeah, really.
That
Good.
My goodness. That is actually one of my questions is did you always know that you wanted to open up a restaurant with lime green walls and a portrait of Elvis looking over your guests? Was that a thing, or did it just come from the Gravity Bar?
No, it's so weird. When I was 16, I don't know why, but I painted my bedroom that color.
Oh,
okay.
interesting.
Isn't that funny? And I don't know why I went back to it, but
Well, I think that's what you do. You end up drawing on your own experiences. And I imagine your time in Lasqueti would have, I don't know what the right term is for it, but it's very natural. Obviously, you can't buy stuff like you can normally. You've got to create stuff, so you've got to be independent. You've got to be creative. There's a lot of artists on Lasqueti. And then when you go to Seattle and see this place that's a little bit different, a little bit off the wall, that would speak to somebody who's lived in a Lasqueti type environment.
Right.
Where, especially there's a lot of, probably draft dodgers from the States there, just a group of eclectic people.
Yeah.
Which basically would sum up Rebar even at the time, because it wasn't a traditional restaurant and wasn't formulated. That was back in the day. When did you open Rebar?
Well, I opened the Little Rebar 1989.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So that would have been still in the tail end of, sort of like, the restaurant industry being a profession, and there's professional waiters, and there's proper prim, and all of that kind of stuff. Food costs were still manageable. Labor was still manageable.
Exactly.
You could actually make money in the restaurant industry back then.
Yeah.
God forbid. Which is interesting because, there must have been a certain element of risk a little bit in pushing the envelope the way you did.
Yeah.
Did you feel that at the time?
Yeah. And I don't know where it came from. Just this crazy, wild, stubborn streak.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. I'll do it. I can do it.
Yeah.
That was the thread, from the time that I opened the Little Rebar. I just had this, I don't know what it was, but.
I think that is actually the definition of entrepreneurism too. Is you have your vision, you're dogged in it, you see it, and you implement it. And you don't listen to all the noise around you, like the woman coming in and saying, "I will never eat at this restaurant if it's green." Right? You're like, "All right, good. I guess I'm doing the right thing."
Exactly. Totally.
Absolutely.
Which is so cool.
What did you have any this was back in the late 80s, early 90s. What was it like to open up a restaurant back then? What were the hurdles?
Yeah, lots. I mean, I'm surprised I continued, but do you want
Sure.
Okay.
Give us the dirt.
Okay. So I was, like I said, I'd worked at Southside Pizza, Grand Central, and these places were built from the ground up. They were shells. And so I was witness to all that. And anyway, I was working at Grand Central, and I just thought, I can do this by myself. What am I doing?
Yeah, why am I working here?
Yeah, why am I working here slogging, and I don't really agree with this, and blah, 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 blah. And so it was down the aisle. That's where Il Terrazzo is now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was Grand Central?
That was Grand Central. They built that from, scratch. So anyway, little 549 Johnson came up for lease and leased it with a friend, but she had her plans changed. So here I am with this space, and I've got to open because I've signed a lease.
Yeah.
Oh God. So, so built a funny story, side story. I decided for some reason I guess I had this futuristic Blade Runner thing, this from the Gravity Bar, this feeling. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So I started putting this toxic marine silver paint on the walls. About killed me. I'm sure that's why I have asthma. But
it literally was toxic.
Yes. In a small space and no air. Anyway, I was up on the scaffolding all by myself. So I was accruing parking tickets. And anyway, it's just a funny, silly story. But I wasn't all that good at keeping the meter full.
It was hard back then. You didn't have the app on your phone, right?
Right. And it was hard getting up and down that scaffolding by myself. Anyway, I go out one time to feed the meter, and there's a cop. And he handcuffs me.
I know.
He handcuffs me.
What?
And he takes me to the drunk tank.
What?
And I'm there for hours.
In the drunk
Nobody
tank.
knows I'm there. There's no cell phone.
Oh my goodness.
And I can't
Were you
remember.
drunk?
No.
Were you
No.
high on paint fumes?
Probably.
Was it for the parking?
It was for the
Oh
parking.
my
God.
goodness.
Because they said we've, I can't remember exactly what he said, but anyway, I had too many parking tickets, and he took me away. And anyway, so
That's awesome.
crazy.
Wow.
I can't remember if I got bailed out or they eventually let me
you
walk.
go.
Oh, anyway, so Build It Up is great, and we're doing really great. And the first day I opened, it was just me and Lisa Witzke, this little skateboard dynamo chick, and it was just the two of us, and it was a blizzard. You couldn't even see Market Square across the street.
Oh, wow.
And she was doing everything. Anyway, we made $400 that day.
Wow.
Felt pretty great.
Oh, back then.
First
that's
day.
amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're running, things are going smooth. And a new fire marshal comes in one day and says, "You can't cook in here." And so, yeah.
Did you have hood vents, or is that what they were on about?
No, but the first fire marshal was okay with my menu.
Yeah.
It was a pretty simple menu. I wasn't deep frying. I wasn't frying anything really.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had to go to Michael Williams. He was my
Landlord.
landlord.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't let me go. He wouldn't let me out of my lease. And they showed me, his manager showed me, it was so dark and dank. It was a fish and chip shop across from Robinson's.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Victoria Fish and Chips, I think it was called. Yeah.
Anyway, it was, it was so dark and big, and I just couldn't, in my head, picture how I'd turn that around. And so I basically broke my lease.
Oh, my trailblazer from Muskeety.
I couldn't, I wasn't going to cook in that fish and chips place.
Yeah.
And there was no other
So that was his
alternative.
solution to your lease problem, is just take over this lease over here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how he was going to let me go.
Yeah.
Let me, anyway. So,
Michael.
you can
So the fire marshal shut you down.
yeah.
The landlord at the time, Michael Williams, rest in peace, didn't let you out of your lease, and you just basically gave him the middle finger.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
What ended up
That's
happening with that?
stupid.
Did that haunt you?
So, so it's an interesting story how I got to get the money for rebar to open, a bigger space. But anyway, I found it was called I think it was called military memorabilia.
Okay.
It's where rebar is now.
Yeah.
Anyway, and it had a for lease sign, and so I checked it out and I leased it.
Wow. So how quick after that one shut to
Well, I had to go to all the banks in town.
Yeah.
And of course, no one was interested.
Yeah.
Here I am, woman, young woman,
Lease breaker.
lease breaker, drunk tank. No.
Yeah. Drunk tank, parking
Criminal.
violator.
Oh God. But, and I had one bank left, and I'd been avoiding them because I didn't think there was a chance in hell. It was a Royal Bank.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it was just, just the lucky.
Yeah.
Lucky.
You've got the right bank manager at the right time, and
Yeah.
he said yes.
It was a woman, Cheryl Redhead, and she was retiring that month.
Oh, perfect. No
And she-
consequences.
Yeah. And she, she listened to me go on and on about what I wanted to do, and she gave me the money.
Wow.
It's amazing. So I went ahead and leased 50 Bastion Square. And then I went down, it was almost ready, and I went down one night, and there was Michael Williams peering through the windows.
Oh,
Checking me out.
hilarious.
And a few days later, he sued me for $90,000.
Oh, what a jerk.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to those
I
that
know.
Yeah, it's true. He was.
Yeah.
That is true.
It was horrible.
So how did you navigate that?
Well, a friend of a family friend, thank goodness, loaned me. They gave me $30,000, and I offered him that, and he took it.
Wow. And he didn't have any, nowadays, the idea, and this is an important segment for people that get into the business, is the landlord has a duty to mitigate their losses.
Mm-hmm.
So even though if you've got a lease for 5 years, the landlord says, well, you owe me the complete lease. No, they got to mitigate their losses. So they got to put up for a lease sign. You're only responsible for the gap in rent that they get.
Exactly.
Right. And maybe TI allowances or what have you, they can argue that. but you're not on the hook for the entire, shouldn't be on the hook for the entire lease. So don't ever let them tell you that you are.
Right.
So they settled
Good
for
point.
$30K, which would have been a lot of money back
It was
then.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
I paid that back.
And
so
you're
okay.
also building out a store, so your cash
Yeah.
flow and you're needing that as well.
Yeah.
What type of TI, like tenant improvements, did you put it? You must have had to put everything in.
It was a shell, yeah.
Yeah.
And the kitchen in that space is a bank vault.
Yeah.
So, the size of the equipment and everything was limited by what would fit in that vault.
And then were you able to, what about venting? And
Yeah.
did you have venting?
I put a vent in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And did
Luckily-
it go all the way to the top of the roof?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
did you met that? I don't know. That's a logistical
Yeah.
nightmare, I would think.
Different regulations too, like different
Yeah.
sort of, I mean, it was probably a little bit like the wild, wild west, I
It was-
guess.
I know that's what I keep thinking about.
Yeah.
I listened to Greg's podcast, and it's just the way it was,
Yeah, you could just get things done and
Yeah.
make it happen. And
without too much
Well,
checking.
he had an interesting story to have. He got his money from the banks as well.
Yeah.
He just got lucky as well because banks don't like
Yeah.
restaurants.
No.
You have
yeah,
to
well, they
get
still
lucky.
don't.
No, they
They,
don't.
Yeah.
they really
Yeah.
don't now.
No, and it's just a miracle that Cheryl Redhead was working
Yeah.
at that time, and she was on her way out. It was, maybe it was her one good deed or something.
Oh,
No,
it sounds
that's-
like she's had a few good deeds if she's going to be that nice.
So what was opening day like when you got all the TIs done, you're ready to go, you've paid off Michael Williams, so you don't have to deal with that hassle, and then you open. Like, was it, or were people like, what the heck is going on here with these green walls? Or
I don't remember opening.
is there an impression? Like,
I remember opening the little one,
yeah,
but the big one, I guess. Yeah, it was just exciting.
Yeah.
It was just so much, the front, the bar, the juice,
by that point, did you have all the kind of concept and idea down of what you actually wanted to deliver?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I guess you would have, in a smaller space, the little rebar would have been a little bit more focused.
Yeah.
Where now you're in a bit of a bigger space, so
Yeah.
you're able to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Did you find that?
Yeah. I probably was stumbling at the beginning, trying to feel my way.
Yeah.
But then I don't remember exactly when, but Wanda Urbanowitz came through the door,
Oh,
and she was my chef after that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just, she and I just had the same language, food language. And it was really, just seemed like that's when things started cooking.
Yeah. Well, I think
sure
that's
it
the
was.
thing about the partnerships. Like, obviously, there's people that go through it independent, but I mean, I've got partners in all the businesses that I'm involved in, and I think there's a lot of power in that, especially if you find complementary people,
Exactly, yeah.
and then you can get along. You guys were in Simpatico. You guys
Absolutely.
you guys obviously worked on the rebar together, the
yeah,
book.
we did the book together. Yeah.
So how long after opening did the book come along? Like, what was?
Yeah. I think,
You were open probably a number of years before that.
yeah,
Right?
I had this amazing run of 10 years with basically the same staff a lot of staff were, held in there for a very long stretch of time. And
That's amazing.
it was just this family. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then 10 years in, I remember the day Wanda and I were in the prep room chopping onions, big pile of onions between us. And we just looked at each other and said, there's got to be more than this.
Yeah.
Everybody else having fun in the front, and we're back here chopping onions. So
Yeah. Crying.
Yeah, crying over the onions.
So yeah, we just said, we've got all these recipes. Let's do something with them. So that was the start of the cookbook.
Well, and that's a pioneering move at the time. I mean, you look at now all these celebrity chefs, and we've even talked about doing a book, a cookbook or something like that at
Yeah.
Zambri's and at Big Wheel
Great.
Burger. We're like, how can we do that? So, but you trailblazed. So the other thing you trailblazed is Starbucks coffee.
That's right.
Yeah. What made you, like, where did you discover it? Obviously you discovered it in Seattle, but
Yeah.
what made you have the confidence to go and say, hey, can I bring this here and talk a little bit about that?
Again, that just stubborn streak, I guess.
Yeah.
I just walked into
Yeah, there's a theme here.
I know, my whole life. But one of my Seattle trips, there was one Starbucks, and it was in Seattle, and it was in Pike Street Market.
Yeah.
And I went in and just talked to the person who was in charge and said, I'd really love to sell your coffee. Would you be willing to ship it up on the Clipper? And he agreed.
Oh, amazing.
You know,
What was it a pound back then? Like would
What
it
was
was
in
like
a pound?
$3 or
Three,
something?
Oh, yeah.
two something comes to mind.
Yeah, 275.
Excuse me.
That's crazy.
I remember, and I'm so glad to hear you say that because thought I was misremembering that
Yes, Sam
part of my
reminded
past.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, because I remember the day it arrived, the Starbucks, and I always told a loose story about how we were at the Rebar. We were serving the first Starbucks coffee in Canada, and I'm like, well, I was there that first day, and I was serving people out of that first pot, I think, or I was like serving either staff or someone. I was pouring coffee from that pot into a cup. I'm like, did I serve one of the first Starbucks coffees in
did.
Canada? And,
You did.
And it felt kind of ironic, but I'm like, no, I'm misremembering.
Yeah,
so thanks for being here to make sure that
To
my
pump your
memory is,
tires?
well, just make
But
sure
that's
I'm
pretty
not crazy.
amazing.
Cool.
When you think about where Starbucks is now, and even in
Right.
Canada, how prolific it is. I know Big Wheel, we go to locations where there's a Starbucks because
Yeah.
they've already done the heavy lifting.
Right.
So there's a thread of that. Even if, obviously Starbucks isn't the best coffee now, but
But they were sure
were at the time.
at the forefront. They were
Yeah.
they were teaching people what coffee could
Yeah.
be, and for you to see that and want it so much to bring it to Canada, that is some foresight for sure. That's
so. And at
thinking
some
ahead
point, I assume they cut you
for
off.
good taste.
Yeah. They got.
They're like, forget this. We're not
Get
selling
this,
to her
right?
anymore.
We can make more money some other way.
Yeah, and then they came up and they opened stores.
Yep.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we don't want to be a wholesale business. Maybe you taught them how not to be a wholesale business.
Could be.
Maybe you're responsible.
You're the,
Right,
you're
maybe,
the
responsible
maybe
original, the OG for Starbucks.
I think they owe you some dividends or something.
Well, let's see. We'll see how that goes by sending him an email. Hey,
Yeah,
by the
Right.
way,
dear Mr. Starbucks.
yeah.
I'll go down to the original store and talk to the guy again.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
probably
it's
still there.
hilarious. So obviously you drew, coming from, the Pacific Northwest, Portland, did you draw a lot of experience? Like, where did you draw the most experience from, like menu items and the way you do business and all that? Like, was it Lesquiti? Was it Portland? Was it Seattle? Where was your touchstone? I think every entrepreneur sort of has their well that they draw back on. Like, what would you say your well is? Like, do you think?
Well, other than just reading everything I could get my hands on, cookbooks, and the scene was just starting to happen back then. But there was just between leaving the Johnson Street location and going to the Bastion Square, there was a couple of months there, and it just drove all around the states, and Chez Panisse and Zuni in California, and
Yeah.
I think Bobby Flay was just starting up in New Mexico, and Ming Tsai in New Mexico. I just went to
Oh, wow.
as many places
Yeah.
as I could reach. Drove around
How
Arizona,
did you
New
know
Mexico,
about
and
all
California.
those places?
Just reading
Okay.
every gourmet and Bon Appetit magazine I could get my hands on, and so
Hmm.
yeah, just like a sponge.
That's incredible. Well, and it's kind of what people do now with Google and,
Right.
but then you actually had to get the magazine, and there's a ton of magazines,
Yeah.
and they were very well written, and the journalistic, attributes to them were great. So you actually could get really good info, but you physically had to travel there
And eat their food.
and eat their
Yeah.
food and see what they did, and you
Yeah.
actually did that. And I think there's no shortcuts to that.
No,
No.
and that would explain your food, like that whole region, New Mexico, Arizona,
Right.
Mexico probably
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
California.
Yeah.
That certainly points to your food, but culturally, I think that your timing opening up a restaurant in Victoria, early 90s, it was a cultural touchstone for so many people, especially of our age group
Yeah.
now. Those were formative years for a lot of people going through your restaurant.
Yeah.
And culturally, I always felt like the Rebar was more on point than anywhere else. It was always a step ahead in terms of music, culture, art.
Well, even the team that you built too, because
Yeah.
I remember going there and just thinking, like, I think I came to Vic in 92. So I've been going to Rebar all through that, period, and seeing the same faces, the same employees, the same staff, and I think that is sort of, building that out is where you build the family.
Yep.
The customers connect with, with the people that are working there, connect with you, connect with the team. And I think that is sort of the, number one reason why things are successful is because you're able to foster that team, build that team, and create that sense of family, right? Along with cooking, like cutting edge stuff at the time, right?
Yeah, no, it was the vibe, and just it couldn't have been done without that connection between all of us. The kitchen was happy, floor staff was happy, customers were happy, we were all happy.
Yeah,
it was just fun.
Was there a secret or a plan for making front and back of house happy all the time, or did you divide and conquer? Were you just nice to everyone, or? Because that always seems like there's always a real divide between front and back. But
I know. I had a lot of ideas. I wanted every server to have to do some dishes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
cross
the way
training.
It should be.
Yeah,
but I think that got by the wayside. But no, I mean there'll always be a little bit of back and front, but for the most part we all got along.
Yeah, and that vibe and the culture that I was talking about, it felt like that was coming from Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
If not
Totally.
If not from
I'll
you,
get
but
that.
where were you getting that? Was it from Seattle?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There was some energy there that was happening at that time.
Yeah.
The Cyclops Cafe. I know, just a lot of cool places.
Yeah, just envelope pushing ideas and concepts and vibes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is about energy, and it's about feeling, how food makes you feel, how because I always go to breaking bread, and this is where all real life stuff gets figured out. You have conversations, and you maybe have breakups, and you meet people, and you go on dates, and it's all centered around food and a vibe, a feeling. Like being able to create that feeling and repetitively create it so that people can draw on it and go, oh, this is what I remember about Rebar and about that establishment.
And taking it and doing their own things, like maybe gourd. You want to talk about gourd for a minute? Okay, sure.
We were reminiscing about the people who came through the doors and went on to do their own amazing things, like Sam. And first, while there we had Gord Martin, who went on to open the Bins in Vancouver.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Wild, crazy man.
Yeah.
Had some good stories.
His vibe was so much like the Rebar. I mean, it was darker for sure.
Darker for sure.
So what did he, he came on to Rebar, was he partnered? Was he just an employee? Was he?
As an employee, and
was he
I
chef?
gave him a free reign with the menu.
Oh, awesome.
So he would do his specials and have fun.
And then he went to Vancouver and he opened up 2 restaurants that
Bins.
And then he opened up a little seafood truck down in Stanley Park. I think he sold the best frickin' salmon burgers around or something. But you would go into his place for a beautiful meal at night, sit up at the bar, and it'd be dark and loud. And James Brown would be blaring. And every time I went there, and I was like, oh, yeah, I can see where he's getting this. And it was definitely from his time at the Rebar. It felt like, it was pretty great. Who else has been through your doors?
Rob Belcham.
Oh, Rob is awesome. We've had him on the show.
Oh my God,
too.
his food.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's incredible.
It makes you cry.
Yeah.
It's just like, I remember the first time he made corn chowder using the whole cobs, right? Letting it steep for hours. It's like,
amazing.
okay.
Then you're like, okay, this is different. This is unique.
Yeah.
I heard that you were his first job at a culinary school.
I think you're right.
Is that true?
Yeah, I remember that.
Wow. What a
thread. Well, and he's involved with Cook's Camp.
Yeah.
And he's got his own podcast as well in Vancouver and has gone on to do great things.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting how many of these talents that come through.
Yeah.
And I think it's, from your perspective, it's probably hard to take credit for that, but I think you should, because all of those experiences and the freedom and the way you ran your business allowed them to be creative and also be inspired, to do entrepreneurial things and to open up their own businesses, just like what Sam did.
Right.
I remember Sam working there too, back, because I remember going to college.
Who could forget?
It's just all he did was play hacky sack And
That's
then
not
I'd
all I
see
did.
it. No, okay. He did a lot of hacky sack, and then I'd seen him at the rebar, and it was just like that whole. We didn't even know each other, but I just knew of him through that and the connection to rebar, which is amazing. So I want to go into a little bit about, because I think all this stuff. It's amazing. The history is amazing, but like anything, life sometimes happens in business, and there's challenges. And talk a little bit about, how much you want to share about the challenges of your exit from rebar, and then we could talk about what's happened since then. But
Yeah.
if you want to go into a little bit about that.
Right. Well, I guess there were stages where you could see these red flags every once in a while. But the first I was saying with Sam that I think it was 1998, or somewhere around there, when the government laid off about 8,000 workers, and that was our meat and potatoes. That was our line up for lunch or line up for coffee, and when we lost that business, we took a hit, and about that time, produce prices were starting to, get out of hand, and we were all produce and labor. Everything we did was from scratch and insane. Everything. Except for canned beans. No, we even made our own beans. Tomato sauce, that was the only thing. Otherwise, everything was from scratch. It was crazy. You can't sustain that. So And then, but we did, the cookbook came out, and that, revised, or we got a push from that.
Yeah, revitalized.
Yeah, new customer base.
Yeah,
and that
tourists
carried us,
were probably,
yeah, and that carried us for a while. But at the same time, a lot of restaurants were opening up. We had, we didn't have it all to ourselves anymore. And also the demographics downtown were changing. And we used to rely on our winter downtown regulars.
Yeah.
And that started dwindling with the changes downtown.
You even saw that happening back then.
Yeah.
The decline of downtown.
Yep. And, that was around, I guess that was around 2005 or so. I started noticing all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, and so with the rising costs and mounting debt, it became clear. And also, I had opened Cascadia, which wasn't entirely successful.
Yeah.
Opened Pure Vanilla in 2002.
Oh,
and
that's right. It's been around for that long.
Yeah, 22 years. And I had to stretch myself thin, and I didn't have a Kaylin.
Yeah.
I didn't have a business partner to help me steer the boat and the ship. So I was making a lot of decisions on the fly, and it came to the point where I realized Pure Vanilla is solid, and I'm going to have to let rebar go in order to save that.
Yeah.
And that was a decision I came to. I had to sell my house to cover debt.
Reconfigure and
yeah, and that was a huge hit. But
well, it's psychological too, because it's interesting, and I know this from personal experience, having open businesses that ended up not working. But you think, you're Teflon, and you think you can do all this stuff, and then when the reality where you're like, okay, now I actually have to make a decision here. And I think a lot of people, and to your credit, you made the hard decisions. Like selling your house is a hard decision.
Terrible.
Not declaring bankruptcy, it's easy to declare it's not easy, but it is something that you can choose to do versus fighting your way out of it and acknowledging that you have to make a different change.
Yeah.
And
I remember going to a bankruptcy person, and I can't. I'd rather sell my house.
Yeah. And just clean it up and clear it up and all that. I mean, I think that's, and that's a cycle of, the huge success to the changing demographics, government policy, all that kind of stuff that affects business, and then making the right decision. Like you said, not having sort of a business partner that could help and assist with that. There's having not gone through it, like even if somebody's really good at business, not having to navigate those challenges, they may not also have the answers either. And sometimes they're just literally going to be like, okay, let's try it. And, I think you've got to give yourself a lot of credit for having steered your way out of that. And also saving, like letting one go and then allowing another brand to be, however many years now, you're 25 years.
22, yeah.
22 years with Pure Vanilla.
Yeah.
And it's a great location.
Yeah, I was lucked out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Pure Vanilla is still part of your family. Your son owns that one.
Yeah,
Or
it's in my
he
name,
operates
but
it?
he operates it. He rents it.
Is that a bit of reversal of roles? I remember, and maybe I'm misremembering. Didn't Seamus own on paper the rebar?
No,
Oh, okay. I didn't misremember it.
Yeah.
Maybe you just said.
Did he run? Did he run rebar for a period or just work there?
no, he just worked there.
Yeah.
He
'Cause he would've
invented
been
the
young,
almond
right?
burger. He made up the almond
Oh,
He
burger.
invented the
right.
almond burger.
Yeah.
Oh.
I might have to call Seamus. Bring back the
You
almond
can't
burger. and
leave
pickle
without
burger.
a list of ingredients. I can't quite figure it out.
Never wanted to tell anybody because it's mostly cornbread.
Yeah. Little old cornbread, little focaccia bread, sprouts, eggs,
Oh.
Worcestershire.
Yeah.
What else? I forgot.
Oh, you know.
I used to make it. Maybe we can figure it out one
Lots of
day.
almond. Yeah.
So you're focusing on the pure vanilla at that time, like after selling your house and navigating all those things, which would have been obviously traumatic. I'm
Traumatic.
assuming.
Very traumatic.
How long did it take you to sort of feel like yourself again after that? Because I think some people think when those things happen that it's like an end, like it's almost like a death. I would think where
Yeah.
you're then having to mourn it, but not understanding that having made those decisions allowed you to get free of them clear sooner. You know, where if you sit in it for years on end, you know, then it takes even more time for you to kind of turn the page. And how long do you think it took you to?
I don't know if I have recovered.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't think about rebar. This, Sam approaching me about doing this interview, I had to relive and stir up the pot, and it was fun. It was great. I really enjoyed it. But
Like, oh no.
I just think it was really sad and hurtful, and I didn't want to think about it.
Yeah.
As
So
wonderful as
really-
it was.
You turned that page and you're like, okay.
Yeah, just shut the book. But,
Yeah.
I'm glad that we have relived some of this because there was so much good.
Yes.
And, when it was good, it was really, really, really good.
Well, and
And-
the influence on others too, like even for me, like not having worked there or whatever, that, establishment sits with me, like it lingers with me. The food lingered with me. How you ran the business lingered with me.
That's great.
All of that was inspiring. So I think, that is, I want to call it the hangover from that. But I think in that you've inspired hundreds and hundreds of other people
Thank
to
you.
do similar things, and also showing them the way that you can push the edge,
Right.
push the envelope,
Right.
and challenge yourself. Right. So
Yeah.
And to open things that you want,
Right.
and just like
be brave,
being that
yeah.
creativity and bringing it to the surface is.
well, if you think about it, you've been in this field since the late 1980s, and you still have your fingerprints on things all those years later. I think that is a testament to what you've laid the groundwork for, and
They're not just
inspiring.
fingerprints in the police officers.
Well, and you've got some
other
fingerprints in the police office,
You got other fingerprints going on here.
Right. I did have to get fingerprint. That's right.
Did you really have fingerprints? Oh my god! I bet they're
Lord.
embarrassed by that now.
They should
better
be. Whoever the officer who was there that day, I want you on the show so we can get your side. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, really.
Come on,
Yeah, we
people.
were probably dead by now.
Oh, that's true, actually. Okay, relatives of this
Yeah.
police officer.
Karmically dead, maybe. It seemed like there was a lot of music in the rebar. And rebar had a lot of different heartbeats: people, food, beer, juice, and music was a regular heartbeat.
Yeah.
Want to explain how that became such a big part of your business?
But I don't know. Music's always been huge in my life. I've made hundreds, you probably know this, of CD tapes.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, there's a chapter here that's sort of missing. I at one point went down to back to Portland from Muskegon, and my husband at the time was offered a job managing a used record store called Django's in Portland. It's a big deal down there, and so we had access to vaults and vaults of amazing vinyl.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, so I had a lot, and he was also a collector. And at that time, I went to art school and got my degree in graphic design. but we ended up back up here in Victoria, and he wanted to open a used music store of his own, Mesros. So we operated that. So I had
Oh, wow.
tons and tons of material to work with.
Oh, I didn't know that was part of it.
Yep.
Huh.
So.
And you drew and designed cover art
Yep.
as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I landed a great job in Portland, which was the fork in the road for me. My life would have been completely different if I'd gone that route. But I came back to Victoria to
So was were your Portland experience after Lasqueti?
yeah, for a couple of
Wow.
years. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing the ground you've covered.
I know.
You know,
I know.
Isn't incredible? Especially when you consider that rebar was around for a number of years. You know, Pure Vanilla has been around for another 23 years on top of that. And you went to graphic design school and you did record store and like it's, yeah,
I know.
the fabric of it all.
So
Like, what would you think of, like, when you're thinking back on it, what are you most proud of? You know, like for yourself, like whatever makes you, it doesn't have to be related to rebar, but like for you, what do you look back on and go, well, I did that, or this is something I'm proud of?
I guess looking back, the team that I put together, I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
You know, that was.
Well, that's probably your biggest reason for success too, I would think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
when it was successful.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the team. That's amazing.
At the time, there wasn't a lot of restaurants in
No, the
competition.
labor pool was pretty big.
But still choosing them. Did you have hands on? Were you the one hiring everyone?
Yep.
And so, what was your interview style like?
Yeah, what was your process?
Just strike up a conversation, pretty casual. I mean, of course, talk about their experience, but yeah, just if you had a rapport with them and, you know, you could see that you were somewhat on the same, you know.
Like connection.
Yeah.
Did you hire any, like, you obviously knew a bunch of people and you met a bunch of people. How were you about hiring people that you knew or your friends or any of that? Or did you keep that separate? Like, were you just,
Yeah. I don't think I did hire many friends.
Yeah.
It's pretty much.
like, you made friends with probably some of your
Maybe too
hires?
much. Yeah. You know, that was a fault.
Yeah.
Looking back.
Yeah.
It's like I always felt like I wasn't the boss,
Yeah.
which is not a great position to put
Yeah.
yourself in for everybody.
Well, I think
So-
there's an element of discomfort too if you're not naturally a boss and trying to understand how to be a boss, but also be their coworker and be their friend at times.
Right.
I think that's probably one of the hardest things of managers, because I think managers, if you're not used to it, you're thinking, oh, I'm the boss. I got to discipline. I got to do this. But the perfect hybrid of all that is you can do everything to everybody. People need boundaries,
Yeah.
right? People like boundaries. Doesn't matter if you're a child or an adult.
Yep.
Having boundaries and creating the boundaries also gives you the space to be their friend, because everybody knows where they stand.
Yeah.
Like, when it's, boss Audrey or friend Audrey or what have you. But it's not always easy as being Audrey to navigate that.
Oh, it's
right?
a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't great at that.
Yeah. And there's also, if it's not something that you like to do.
Yeah. It's
You
not
know?
natural.
So
to me.
you kind of put it off to the side.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that's sometimes where some of those prickly little things that you miss
Mm-hmm.
come up, where you entrust someone to do a role.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, wow, I did not,
Exactly.
And some of it is, because I know I've been there, some of it is purposely ignoring,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And some of it is just like, oh, I had no clue it's happening and it's completely blindsiding.
Yeah.
But it
Yep.
always stems, like, if you look at the flag of it, and this is for other entrepreneurs that are getting started or are started, is look at the flag,
Exactly.
right?
It
Pay
totally-
attention to that flag, because
So
that's what's
important.
going to come back to you.
Yeah.
And put yourself in those uncomfortable situations where you have to have those uncomfortable conversations. And as in business, we all have. So you're either going to have it at the beginning or you're going to have it at the end. Like when things go sideways,
Yeah.
you're going to be forced to have those hard conversations. So just have a less difficult conversation at the beginning, even though it feels like a difficult conversation.
And
Do
that
it at the
just
beginning.
comes with experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say if there's one thing, pay attention to those flags.
Yeah.
And like you say, don't ignore them.
Don't ignore them. And I think get some advice, some independent advice.
Exactly.
And then say, hey, I'm feeling this. Am I right on this? What should I do? And then have that conversation with whoever it needs to be with.
And maybe more than one person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get
Because
a balance. Yes.
I had someone I was bouncing things off, but that person didn't necessarily have the experience that I needed at that time.
Yeah.
And hindsight, I wish I had a couple of people to bounce or 3 people to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah. Try. And it's not even shopping for the right advice. It's literally getting a range. Right.
Yeah.
So I think people default to talk to the person that they most trust.
Right.
But then going out and asking someone else who they would talk to about the same subject, and then going and talking to them about it as well.
Yeah.
Getting that independent advice so that you can get that range, and then be
Exactly.
prepared to act on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's hard.
that's the hard part,
Yeah.
because a lot of people just, a lot of people will think that they're going out to get independent advice, but then just look for bias confirmation. Where they're like, oh, well, this is sort of what I'm thinking about. And then
Right.
it makes you feel better. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're just walking to some degree off a cliff
Yep.
and not getting the right advice, but feeling like you've done it. Oh, I did consult, but you didn't really consult, because you need to get that. I think that's an excellent suggestion,
Yeah.
is getting multitude advice, especially people that you don't know,
Yeah.
right? That have no dog in the fight, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish sometimes I had a partner that I could just to be the bad guy. Because
Yeah.
And blame things on.
I can't be that person, and I see that in you as well. I
Yeah,
mean,
totally.
I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
I think you're probably a people pleaser.
Yep.
I'm fairly soft spoken when I'm at work. Really, if I'm having to deal with stuff, and I'm the last person to want to tell anyone what to do. So I always try to have a manager who's more of a HR person. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's
you need
not-
that good
it's not
cop
me.
and bad cop.
Yeah.
And you have to let them do their job, even if you're like, I have that person in our organization, and sometimes I'm like, but then I'm like, you know what? Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because some people may be like taken aback by it, but they know that person exists, which I think it's important to have.
Yep.
Because if they think they can walk over, like, I think we're all share that same quality of pleasers, and we don't want to go through this prickly stuff. We just want to do what we like to do, and that's an entrepreneurial attribute as well.
You can't do everything.
You can't do everything, and we're not very detailed orientated people.
Yeah.
There's probably certain things that we are. I'm very detailed about numbers, but I'm not very detailed about process. So I like the process, but I'm not going to be the guy that's going to implement it. I'm going to pay someone to implement it,
Right.
right?
There's
And hopefully they're
that
doing it.
whole
Right.
theory of having the visionary and the implementer.
Implementer, exactly.
And
Yep.
I've periodically missed my implementer. I actually have one now, which is really great.
Awesome.
Did you have that implementer? And
Nope.
no,
Nope.
no.
Nope. That's why I was so lucky with that team.
Yeah.
But when that team left, after 10 years or so, then things started changing.
Yeah. Combination of the environment changing, the team changing,
Yeah.
things change.
And thinking that I can give that same free reign to
Yeah. To a different group of people.
different group didn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Didn't work at all.
Yeah.
And, I made mistakes with that
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, and I think that's part of it too, is like a lot of people, they hang on to their mistakes and they let the mistake kind of take the bigger part of the heart of it. Whereas I think the mistake, like if you just look at mistakes differently, like I tell our team, like, make a mistake. I'd rather you make a decision that is even wrong than not to make a decision, because how are you going to learn anything? Like, I think if you look back, you would do a lot of things differently.
Yep.
But it also, making those mistakes is okay. It's okay to make mistakes. You should actually encourage mistakes.
As long as you learn from them.
You learn from them,
Yeah.
but you think about, okay, you had this perfect team for a decade and everything's going great. But then all of a sudden now, when things start going sideways, you're less prepared to navigate those waters.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was a little choppier
Mhm.
earlier,
Right.
then
If it was
you probably
broken
would have been, it would have
Mhm.
been a little bit better for
Yeah.
you, but also as a business experience,
Yeah.
to have done that.
That's true.
And I think a lot of people, they want to do things perfectly. You're not going to, don't. Encourage mistakes, encourage independence, encourage people to make choices that maybe you wouldn't agree with. But what a great opportunity to discuss it. But that also gets you practicing
Yes.
sort of the boundaries,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Because if your team does make mistakes, you can use that as an opportunity to confront them with it and discuss how you would do it differently, which then gets you practicing creating those boundaries, which I think as an entrepreneur is so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bunch of messages here. It's about making mistakes, but it's also about surrounding yourself with people that, you know, are giving you objective advice, right? So that you can actually do that, and then actually taking their advice. And,
Right.
and, you know, it's like that whole adage, hiring slow, firing fast, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Same with advisors, same with staff, same with, you know, process. Like,
Listen to your lawyer.
yeah,
Listen
listen
to
to your
your
lawyer
lawyer.
to a degree. To a degree.
agree.
Don't
To a
take
degree.
business advice from lawyers or accountants. Take accounting advice from accountants. Take legal advice from lawyers. But there's a lot of professionals that will give you business advice, which sometimes find a business person that's done business to give you business
Right.
advice.
Right.
And then go to your lawyer and do the legalities, and the accountant to do the accountant part. But I get,
Yeah.
that's my own personal thing about those. Like, make sure whoever you're taking the advice from is qualified to give the advice.
Right.
Right? There's
Right.
a lot of bad business lawyers. There's a
Yeah.
lot of bad business accountants.
That's for sure.
Right? So
Yeah.
make sure that and that's where you get that broad,
Mhm.
you know, advice circle, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
take this information. take this-
Interview your accountants. Interview. Your
Yeah.
lawyers.
Yeah, and lawyers, and find out, okay, well, why is this lawyer? Because I've had deals where the person we're trying to expand to Vancouver, which might be a news bulletin to some.
Wow, yeah. You heard
But
it
we
here
went
first.
and we found this perfect spot, and the owner of the spot is a dentist. So, and maybe he'd be a doctor, but it's a similar type of thing. So the dentist is taking business advice from his lawyer, because the lawyer's like, oh, you don't want to lease a spot to a restaurant. Okay, is he your lawyer or is he your business advisor? Like, he can't be both, or shouldn't be both. And you're a dentist, so what do you know about leasing space to other? So you're dealing with all these different dynamics. And you know what? Like, if I was his business advisor, I would say, yeah, rent it to a restaurant, because you'll have a tenant forever. And sure, there'll be problems, but they're going to literally invest $500,000, $700,000, $800,000 in your space.
And they're never going to give up.
And they're never going to give up. And
No,
guess
they
what?
won't.
There'll be some other dreamer right behind them to rent it out after them. Like, or you can make it a dentist office on a corner. Anyway, that's my own thing.
Yeah. Good advice.
I'm on a
Good
rant about
advice.
that. So what does the future look like for you now? Like, are you retired? What's next for?
Well, art's always been my first love. So just trying to get back into oil painting.
Oh, amazing.
And on the side, I'm growing flowers and selling bouquets because I've got a pretty good backyard. It's full of flowers.
Where is your back? You're like, are you in Salt Spring Island?
No, I'm on Qualicum Beach.
Oh, Qualicum Beach. Oh, nice.
Beautiful Qualicum Beach.
Oh,
It
I
is so
love that
beautiful.
area. My dad, rest his soul, used to love Qualicum Beach. Like, he'd just drive up there and just spend his time on the beach. Like, it's amazing. Every time I go by there, I think of my dad.
Really?
Yeah. He spent a lot of time up there.
It's like a lesson titled Oak Bay Village.
Yes, yeah.
A lesson time.
There is, but they have covenants up there for, like, they don't allow any franchises. They don't.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of research on the Qualicum
yeah.
Beach in Parkville.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah. It's
and
changing.
you've been up there for a few years now?
Yeah. I think I went up in, I sold Rebar in 2019, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Been up
Oh,
for a while.
wow.
Yeah.
So is that when rebar
Yeah.
ended for you?
Yeah. 2018.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm curious how they're managing the new buyer, the new owners.
I haven't been. I haven't heard.
I was thinking while you were talking, like, what something is rebar even still there? Like, because I've gone to Windcries Mary a bunch, but I guess it is. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
it got bought by the people who own Bentmast.
Yep.
Is that right?
oh, yes.
And
I
I
think
don't know
it's
much about them.
family co-op owned or something. I think everyone in the kitchen has a share.
Oh,
Oh, interesting. I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
that
it's
to
a
me
nice
is
thing.
amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
And I think that is the evolution of, like, I'm looking at trying to figure out how I can get our employees ownership a big wheel? Like, what's the best way to do it where it's easy for them, but also beneficial? They see a benefit and, just rewarding staff.
Longevity, yeah.
Longevity.
Is that the kind of thing that you would encourage or would have done maybe differently? Is got more people to buy in, more of those long-term
I always
employees?
thought about that. I think it's beautiful.
That's a really good business model, I think.
Yeah. I think they're all family members at Rebar, so it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you could tell by the operator, because I'm thinking about the Met Mass, and I've only been there a few times. It's in James Bay.
That's right.
But I really like, every time I go, I'm like, oh, yeah, the service was good. The food was good. I'm like, I should come here more. And I just don't. So I think that sort of culture, assuming that is their culture, it does translate into the product. There's a love. And it's almost like what you created back in the day of that family unit.
Right.
And it's a great way to try to get that going again in a world where there's so many distractions. There's so many different things people look at and, but how do you focus them in doing it? There's so much value in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard. Something to strive for.
Yeah. Well, I think it's about the striving, like having that goal and just trying to achieve it. And maybe you come up a little short, but you're better off for having tried.
For sure.
I'm
sure you do that.
We try.
Going back to food for a little bit, was it you who was pairing the food and the wine, food and the beer? How did you know how to do that? Just instinctively? Or?
Well, we had a pretty simple wine list.
It was good though, wasn't it?
It was good. It was as good as I could afford. But no, I don't know how many. I don't know. Maybe just all the books I read. I don't know.
Yeah, just comes naturally.
It's pretty simple. White wine goes with, you don't mix any tomato dishes with a white wine. And, pretty basic.
Okay. And to make this clear on tape,
and tasting
and tasting notes. You were never a vegetarian restaurant, were you?
Were we?
No, I think everyone thought you were. I thought like everyone assumed you were a vegetarian restaurant.
Yeah.
And when there was shrimp or the odd piece of chicken, people would lose their minds.
We never had chicken, but did I want bacon.
Oh, maybe I did chicken and people lost. Maybe you lost your mind because I brought chicken in.
I think that's a stereotypical view because especially I think of now where, I think of Big Wheel Burger where we have veggie items, we're celiac, we have celiac protocols, we're all this stuff trying to being everything to everybody, but also, being specific to what we think people's desires are. Right. And I remember back in Rebar, I used to think it was a vegan restaurant or veggie or something like that. And my wife at the time, Jo Zambri, she'd be like, let's go to Rebar. And I'd be like, wow, I want bacon. I want, all those things. But I'd get there and I'd be like, wow, this is amazing. But my perception, because you had wheatgrass shots.
Right.
I'm like, oh, you must be vegan or you're tree hugger or whatever these stereotypes are. Yeah. Right. Whereas that's the beauty of where we are today as a society is we're way more open to possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah. Right? It was pretty out there back then.
Yeah. Back then
it was like green cuisine.
Oh yeah. Green
definitely,
cuisine.
Yeah.
Are they they're still around, aren't they?
They're doing way better now.
Yeah. Good for them.
Yeah. I think
are they in the same spot? Because they were in, wow. Yeah. Because that's 30 years.
Or more. Yeah. Crazy.
I mean, the whole thing that's crazy green cuisine.
But you guys were always modern food.
Modern food, which just means, well,
you're still
fresh.
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 Okay.
Yeah, just try to just steer away from getting stereotyped as vegetarian for obvious reasons. But just making the food so fresh and flavorful that you really don't, I mean, of course you miss it, but you don't miss it that much. The meat.
Well, not when the flavors and the body and everything were so big and filling and.
Well, it's real food too. That was the one thing that struck me at the time was this is real food. It's not processed. It's not manipulated. It's just real quality ingredients.
And being modern back then, meant you're ahead of the curve when it came to the smoking bylaws too, doesn't it? You want to tell a story about smoking?
Yeah, another first, I guess. Just I don't know if I was first, but I just announced we're going to be a non-smoking restaurant, and I guess it was one of the first in Victoria.
That's amazing.
Did people lose their minds?
Yeah, I was Jim Patterson, who is a contractor. He's working around the area when I was announcing that, and he just popped in and said, "You'll never make it."
Oh, that's hilarious.
What a jerk!
Well, we were on those good terms, but
Well, it's funny that you
Back then?
Yeah, it's funny.
Oh, not like the big Patterson, not Pedersen.
no.
Oh, I thought Jimmy
Bill
Patterson.
Patterson. He
Okay,
He's a developer.
I take
Yeah.
back the jerk thing. I don't know him. I thought you were talking about
not
the,
Jim Pattison.
Oh,
No,
that's
no.
what I thought
well,
you were
maybe I
talking
said
about.
Jim. I meant Bill, but no, he did a lot of the construction at Grand
Yeah.
Central.
Okay.
Well, and he did a
Built it
lot
up.
of like heritage stuff too. Like he actually, one of the first buildings that we bought the building where Cherry Bomb Toys was, and we were going to move Zambrys into it. And the building was a wreck. And thankfully, I got advice from the Jaws. And this is talking about seeking advice. Got the advice from the Jaws, who were our landlords
Right.
and good customers. And we're like, hey, we got to, and he's like, yeah, I'll get Bill in there. And he got all these people in there to view the building for me. And I went with them, and they're like doing this, and this.
Great.
And
Awesome.
they're asking 1.1 for the building. We ended up getting it for 800,000 based on all of these points they brought up that were legitimate.
Awesome, yeah.
And I'm like, and Bill was one of them. And it's so funny what a small community this is.
Yeah.
You know, he's
Yeah.
yeah. I really don't even know if he's around anymore, but I mean, this is the mid 2000 early
Okay.
2000s.
Yeah. He was
Yeah.
a
So he's out there telling
He
you
was a
to
player,
not,
yeah.
not do smoking.
right.
This we won't survive.
I won't survive.
Oh,
And but that must have been 10, 15 years before the actual smoking ban, right?
Yep.
That's awesome. So the people have to put their cigarettes out in the front before the
Yeah.
I mean, but it
seems
the
so
whole
normal now,
pioneering of it is that's the thing that I love is just pushing the envelope. And I think when we opened Big Wheel Burger, I was like, it'd be really cool to have a fast food joint that was carbon neutral.
Nice.
And I didn't even know if we would be able to make it, but it didn't matter because I was going to try. And I think that's the thing is come up with these big ideas, try them,
Yeah.
and then, see what happens because it actually sets you above and like that's news,
Yeah.
right? Even if there's a bunch of people that hate it, that's
Right.
news.
You're doing living wage.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's
We started that
yeah, good for you.
in, I guess, just when COVID started.
Yeah, right at that time.
Yeah, it was a first for cafes in Victoria.
So cool.
Well, and so much has changed too. Like even this coming summer, the starting wage is $17.40, which I think as much as I'm like, trying to figure out how to make that work from a restaurant standpoint, it's pretty inspirational that we as a society are focusing in those areas. And then now we just have to challenge ourselves to try to how to figure out how to make money in that world.
How far can you push your prices?
Yeah, how far can you push your prices? And I think that's the challenge is getting customers to realize, like if you think about what you pay for your goods at home versus what it would take to buy them outside, like I don't think restaurants making 10% shouldn't be that much of a stretch, but the average restaurant's making 2 to 5%.
Yeah.
So it's like, we don't need 100% more. Well, I guess we do in a way.
We do, because that's
but
only
it's still
for
only
the
10% of the
Right.
gross, right? So
Right.
if it's $40 or $30 or like on a burger, $11.50, it's $1.50. Like, how can we
No,
make
it
it
used to
extra
be
$1.50?
10%, but now all
Yeah.
the new costs.
Yeah,
Yeah, was it around 10% when you were doing business?
I'm sure it wasn't there, but I mean that was
the goal.
The goal.
the
That was the
dream.
norm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but not if you have high labor, but like we did. But
Yeah, and you had high labor. Was it because you paid people more, or it's because you wanted more staff for a better service?
well, we did everything from scratch.
Yeah.
we didn't
the
even
amount
buy.
of-
It's so stupid. We didn't even buy cut onion. Like all
yeah,
this stuff.
just basic
Redid-
stuff that you
yeah.
wouldn't have compromised the product.
Yeah, exactly.
But the integrity of what you're trying to do, which I think, listen, man, like I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well,
like-
and
Your
so
customers will pay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But charging, and this is where the business side comes in, is charging what you need to charge, because I think you're, rather than worrying about what everybody thinks, worrying about what your promoters and your supporters think. And if you're doing it right, they will be there.
Yeah.
And, you know, feeling the fear and doing it, because and one of the reasons why we started Bread and Butter Collective was that reason alone, is to, you know, when COVID hit, is like there's such a range of skill sets. You know, you've got the artist chef who owns their business but has zero business experience, doesn't know how to navigate cash flows and how you even to find help, or even to understand that the business development bank could help them. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like all those different things, or business planning, or the fact just raise your prices. And guess what? Maybe your customer base shrinks a little bit, but you're going to be focused on the customers that actually make you money, and they're there to support you. And I don't think 10% is crazy.
No, it's,
You know,
it
it's
should
not
be
a crazy expectation.
Well,
You
that's
probably really
good.
need to make 15%,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
God forbid that happens.
Well, I love that you guys have this collective. I wish I'd had it.
Yeah.
Well,
Especially
you can
with-
still be part of it.
What's that?
You can still be part of it.
Yeah. You are part of it.
Well, it's, you know, what was I going to say? It just, with the climate change and everything what we're dealing with and
Yeah.
will be dealing with, it's so you need people around you to figure things out.
Yeah.
And where, you know, how do we get through this? And do you know somebody who has eggs, or, you know, just everything local? Try to go local more if you can.
Stronger together,
Yeah.
you know, and that's, you know, even the sustainability in our area. I'm involved with the Fed Urban Agriculture, and we just bought a farm, downtown urban farm, topsoil. So we're going to be growing,
Nice.
you know, to giving it to food banks, but also selling it to social enterprise. And we're looking to expand and do more farming, urban farming, which
Great.
I think is pretty cool. That's the kind of stuff that excites me.
Yeah.
Is, you know what, like running a business, all that is great, but actually pushing the envelope a little bit and changing how you think. And I think that,
Yeah.
you know, as we wrap up our show, that's sort of, to me, what you signify and what you did all those years ago. And, you know, sharing that message and coming on and talking about your story is going to inspire other people to do the same and do it. Push that envelope. Try and make those mistakes. Don't be afraid of the mistakes, because you're going to learn from them, and then seek some amazing advice.
Yep.
And will you come on the show again at some point in the future? Will
Love
you?
to.
And we'll talk recipes. That
you
is
can.
something I want to talk to you. Just one quick question is, what's your favorite recipe from the Rebar Cookbook?
Ooh.
Or do you have one? Or anything from those days that you just loved?
Well, I don't know. Monk's curry is good.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
The yam quesadilla, rebar
Oh.
chocolate cake.
Oh, yes,
Classic,
yes,
right?
yes.
That's yeah.
And did you made all those? Those are all your doings?
Sorry. Oh my God, that's my phone. Sorry.
It's okay. It sounds great.
It's okay.
It's a good melody to the end of our show.
Yeah.
This is our new outro song.
It's our outro song. Well, I got to say, Audrey, this is the first time we've met. Your reputation precedes you. You've been amazing. I love talking about those old stories. And even if some of them maybe have little scabs on them,
Yeah.
I think that's okay too.
Yeah.
And thank you for, you know, you being comfortable to talk with us about it. And yeah, I'd love to have you back on again to even dive deeper into this and your wealth of experience. And I love, you know, Pure Vanilla too. Like,
Thank you.
for anybody who's listening, go to Pure Vanilla.
Still
Amazing.
going
I drive
strong.
by there every day. It's on my way home. Yeah.
Oh, I guess it is, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Well,
amazing.
thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, you guys. This has been fun.
Audrey, it
Oh.
was so nice to see you again for one thing and reconnect. And I can't wait to see
Like
you
we're
again.
relatives or something.
Yeah.
I know.
It's family, but you
Aw.
talk about creating the family. That's what
Yeah,
it is. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
it's the family, because those shared experiences and knowing you've been in the trenches together, which is
Those were the best
unparalleled.
days.
Yeah, the best days.
Yeah.
The old days are always the best days.
Yeah, the trenches.
Up to my elbows in antipasto.
We used to do the French line together. Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do I ever? It was barely kind of foggy, but yes. Yeah, it was great times. I cut all my jobs there. I mean, it wasn't my first job and it wasn't my first food job, but certainly was like the one I cut all my chops on for sure.
Well, it led you to where you are today, which I think that's the most important thread for me, is inspiring other entrepreneurs to do what you do and to take those risks. And if you know what you know now, you would never do it.
Nope.
So it's that naivety. Keep the naivety, and just remember that when you look back on it, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I was young and dumb. That's why I did that."
Yeah, exactly. Where would we be without young and dumb?
Young and dumb, it keeps the world going. So all the future young and dumbers, go
harder, go faster.
Go faster. Don't be afraid to push the envelope.
And paint the walls green.
And paint the walls green, any color you want. And don't listen to the BS, man. Just do it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for the show. Thanks, Audrey. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Kaylin. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
It was so great, Audrey. Can't wait to do it again. Can't wait to see you again. Really.
I look forward to it.
Remember to be kind.
Be really nice, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, Bunny's Kitchen, Buzz Coffee House, Eagle-Ite, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Eva Schnitzel House, Farmsgate Foods and Catering, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Nikkei Ramen Ya, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Keating Pizza, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, The Nimble Bar Company, Ruth and Dean, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, Spoon's Diner, Truffles Inspired Catering, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.